Switching your dog from kibble to an all-meat carnivore diet can have profound benefits on the health of your dog, but just like with us, the transition can lead to some unwanted side effects. So in this video, I'm going to talk about 6 of the most common side effects that could occur from switching your dog from kibble to an all-meat carnivore diet, the possible causes, and some potential solutions that can help mitigate the risk of those unwanted side effects. So before we dig in, my name's Jacob, and in 2017, I became very, very ill and was riddled with a plethora of chronic conditions. After being failed by the medical industry and trying diet after diet after diet, trying to heal myself naturally, I eventually landed on the carnivore diet out of sheer desperation. And after transforming my health and completely overcoming every single chronic condition that had been plaguing my life for over a year, I transitioned both of us to an all-meat carnivore diet, and we have experienced nothing but profound benefits. And over that 5.5-year carnivore journey, I've learned quite a bit about what works and what doesn't for me and my dog, and specifically learned a lot of very hard lessons that I'm going to share with you today so you can learn from my mistakes. So if these types of topics resonate with you, be sure to like, subscribe, and let's build this tribe of like-minded people. Alright, so one of the most common side effects your dog can experience when transitioning from kibble to an all-meat carnivore diet is excessive itching. And along with excessive itching can sometimes come with excess earwax, an increased prevalence of skin conditions, excess dandruff, and other skin-related conditions. Now, from my experience, this is usually only caused by a couple different factors. The first factor being the food and the transition away from kibble to carnivore. Because when you transition away from a diet of hyperprocessed grains, artificial ingredients, fillers, additives, and a bunch of things that are probably causing those conditions, and you move over to a low inflammatory diet, what happens is your dog's body begins to naturally detox. And through that detox process can come a lot of unwanted side effects. This is the same thing that happens when people switch from a standard American diet to a keto diet or to a carnivore diet. You start to detox. And with our skin being our largest detox organ, a lot of the stuff that comes from your body and it's trying to rid itself from your body gets detoxed through the actual skin. And unfortunately, dogs can't really sweat, so that natural detox pathway could be slower in a lot of different cases. But that doesn't mean that the detox through the skin is not going to occur. The only problem with that is that it could be drug out over the course of several months. So things in the detox process that could lead to this is, like I mentioned earlier, just a diet full of hyper-processed ingredients. All that bad stuff that's in the food is trying to now get out of the dog's body. So think of things like oxalates from the plants that are in the food, heavy metals, which most dog foods are heavily contaminated with at levels well above what the EPA allows in our food. Things like PFAs, phytolates, parabens, a lot of different antibiologics like glyphosate, atrazine, and other pesticides and herbicides that are also in these foods that contain plant products like grains, legumes, and other vegetables. Now that your dog is not consuming these foods, its body is going to try to get rid of that stuff as fast as possible. And it's going to be coming out in pretty much every way it possibly can. And through that natural detox process, that's also what usually leads to excess earwax and things like excess dandruff. It's all part of that. And this is one of the reasons why I always recommend a slow transition process, because if you transition too fast and you switch straight from kibble to carnivore, these side effects are usually going to be amplified because it's an abrupt change and your dog's body is going to be trying to detox very, very quickly. Whereas if you taper off of hyperprocessed kibble and gradually introduce meat over the period of about 30 days or so, those detox symptoms are usually going to be lessened quite a bit. And the negative side effects from that are usually going to be a lot less severe. Another thing that can help is just making sure your dog's properly hydrated at all times, and make sure the food that you're feeding your dog is very clean and very fresh, because just like with people, histamines can also be a problem, especially during this very fragile transition period. So feeding your dog fresh meat or meat that has just been thawed out from being frozen is always going to be the best option. Anything that's been sitting around for a few days, anything that's aged or canned, can be problematic. Now, if it's not diet related, it could also be from environmental factors. So you want to think about the things your dog's exposed to on a day-to-day basis. The impacts that these environmental factors can have on your dog can actually be amplified. So things like laundry detergent, what are you washing your dog's bedding in, shampoos, bug repellents, anything that you're putting on your dog's body, you want to be very, very mindful of and make sure that it's non-toxic and that it's not contributing to your dog's skin condition. Now, in my experience, these symptoms usually resolve themselves over a period period of time. But again, the detoxification process can take a while, so don't necessarily expect to see overnight results. These symptoms could linger on over the course of weeks, several months, up to a year. So just be patient with your dog, make sure the diet's dialed in, make sure your environment's dialed in, and over time these things should clear up on their own. The second common unwanted side effect is trouble consuming food. Trouble swallowing, choking, things like that. And that is almost always going to be due to improperly sized bones or just your dog's ability to consume raw meaty bones. So if your dog's experiencing trouble when consuming its meal, that is the first thing to pay attention to. What kind of bones are you feeding the dog? Are they properly sized for the dog? And do they fit your dog's personality type? So to break that down even further, make sure the bones are raw meaty bones, which means a bone with meat on there. You never want to feed a bare bone to a dog with no meat covering it. The meat that's around the bone provides additional cushion when the dog bites down into the bone. And as the dog chews it up and swallows it, it also provides a protective barrier around the bone fragments that allows it to be safely consumed, essentially. It allows it to be safely swallowed and digested. Without that meat around the bone, there will certainly be hazards for your dog consuming and digesting these bones. You also want to make sure the bones have never been cooked. As far as sizing goes, you want to make sure the bone is properly sized for your dog's breed, size, and weight. Another very hazardous bone that you want to completely avoid is any bone that has been machine cut. Now, another factor to consider is if your dog has any kind of dental issues. So if your dog has missing or worn teeth, or has dental problems in general, raw meaty bones may not be the best option, and you may want to opt for grinding your bones up into bone meal. And that leads us to the third common side effect or potential problem, and that is tooth problems. So typically when switching your dog from kibble to an all-meat carnivore diet, your dog is going to see a lot of benefits in terms of oral health. When dogs consume hyperprocessed kibble, they're essentially consuming hyperprocessed sugars and carbohydrates, and that leads to elevated blood sugar levels, which can lead to oral problems. But as I mentioned before, if you're feeding the wrong types of bones to your dog, that could lead to dental problems because you could experience things like tooth fractures. Your dog can wear its teeth down if it's trying to consistently chew through bones that are way too hard and dense for it to consume. Something else that can be problematic is that if you're feeding your dog a carnivore diet without raw meaty bones. And the problem with that is that your dog is not actively chewing through anything abrasive. And the act of your dog doing this is very, very important for your dog's overall health. Because what happens when you don't have that in your dog's diet is that there's nothing to clean your dog's teeth. So over time, tartar and plaque is going to build up on your dog's teeth, just like it does with ours, and that could lead to dental problems. So like I mentioned before, just be willing to adapt and adjust. If you have to give your dog bone meal instead of raw meaty bones because your dog has dental problems, that's the way to go. The fourth unwanted side effect, and this one is probably the most common out of all the ones I've listed so far, and that is loose or runny stools or diarrhea. You get rid of all these things that your dog's been consuming for years and years on end for every single meal, you can expect the adaptation process to be a little rocky. And diarrhea, loose and runny stools is going to be a very, very common thing to happen. Getting rid of fiber is a big cause for that. Another cause, like I mentioned before, is the detox process. Now, after you move past the detox and adaptation phase, if you're still experiencing problems in that area, then there's a chance that it could be from too much fat. Dogs do not require as much fat as people at all. Another very common cause for this could be too many organs in the diet. Now, this is something I experienced with my dog. Specifically, my dog does not handle liver very well if I feed it too often. So if you're feeding organs and you're doing it often, you might want to scale back on that to pretty much 0 for a period of time and see if those symptoms resolve. If they do, then you can kind of adjust. You can add a little bit back in at a time and figure out where the threshold is. And you just want to make sure that you stay below that threshold. Another potential cause could be that there is a lack of fibrous material in the dog's diet. Now, dogs and people do not have a nutritional requirement for fiber, but dietary sources of fiber is something that would be in your dog's natural diet. The only difference is that that would not come from plant products for the most part. Most of the fiber is going to be coming from animal-based fiber, feathers and hair. So if your dog's experiencing loose and runny stools and diarrhea consistently for a period of time, and you're through the adaptation period and reducing the amount of organs doesn't do the trick, it could be that your dog requires a little bit of dietary fiber. Now, it's up to you on whether or not you want to include vegetable fiber or animal-based fiber. That really comes down to a personal preference and what you have access to. Now, in the realm of fiber, and something that's often overlooked, is that a lack of bones can also cause this problem. So if your dog is not consuming enough raw meaty bones and there's not enough bone material in there, that could also potentially lead to these unwanted side effects. And then on the flip side of that, moving into the fifth potential unwanted side effect is constipation. And while this isn't as common as loose and runny stools, this is still pretty common. And this again can be tied back to several different factors. The first one, and the most obvious one, is the lack of hydration. So your dog being dehydrated. Now, if your dog's just not drinking enough water and you can't really coax your dog into drinking more water, consider making bone broth. That is a great way to hydrate your dog, and it's going to entice your dog to consume liquids even if it's not wanting to consume water. Another very common reason for this, and it's something we just touched on, is too many bones in the diet. So if you're including too much raw meaty bones, there is a potential for that excess material that would be excreted from your dog's body to kind of clog things up. Raw meaty bones should make up about 10% of your dog's meal. Now just keep in mind that every dog is different, so you're going to have to adjust that, and you're going to have to tailor the diet specifically to your dog. Another possible cause could be too much fiber if you are actually including fiber in your dog's diet. So again, just adjust, scale that back, and see if those issues resolve. And then lastly, and another potential cause, is just a lack of variety in the diet. So if you're feeding your dog strictly very, very lean meats and there's no fat whatsoever in the diet, there's no skin, there's no collagen, there's no organ meats, that could also potentially lead to constipation. So you always want to make sure you're including variety. And the sixth and final, most common unwanted side effect is nausea, vomiting, and general lethargy. And there are some very common reasons for this, but just keep in mind that if your dog's experiencing these things, these can be signs of problems that are a little more serious. So this is something you want to pay very, very close attention to. Monitor this and really act on this to make sure that your dog isn't experiencing some of the more serious problems we're going to talk about in just a minute. So one of the most common causes for this is, again, adaptation. As your dog's adapting, it could disrupt the digestive process and it can lead to things like nausea and vomiting. Another potential cause is that you're doing too much too soon, or you're trying to transition your dog too fast from kibble to carnivore. I always recommend transitioning your dog over the period of about 30 days just to alleviate these symptoms. So if you're moving too fast and your dog starts experiencing these problems, you may want to consider a more gradual approach. Another potential cause could be too many organs. So this is definitely the case with my dog. If I give her too many organs, specifically liver, she gets very, very sick. So if you're giving your dog organs and you're doing that consistently, consider cutting those out for a while, see if these symptoms alleviate, and then try adding them back in a little bit at a time until you've reached a threshold. Now, this could also be due to food intolerance. I've seen dogs that do not do well with certain types of meat. So if there are specific types of meat that you're including in your dog's diet, consider subbing those out for something else and see how your dog responds. Another potential reason for this is that you're giving your dog too much food. So as a general rule of thumb, to figure out how much you need to be feeding your dog, you can take your dog's weight and multiply that by 2% or 3%. And that's going to give you the total weight in pounds that your dog should be consuming per day. So if you come up with a number and it seems to be too much for your dog, you can always scale that back, or you can split it up into 2 or more meals. Now on the flip side of that, nausea and vomiting can also be caused from too little food or infrequent meals. And one of the key indicators for this is that if your dog vomits and it's green, that means it's bile. And if your dog's vomiting bile, it means your dog is very, very hungry and you should feed it as soon as possible. So if you're experiencing this problem and you have a larger breed dog, that could be a very serious problem, because when this happens to larger breed dogs, they can experience what's called stomach bloat, or some people call it stomach flipping, which can be potentially fatal. And that's something you want to avoid at all costs, obviously. So if your dog is getting that hungry, just make sure you're feeding it more food and consider feeding your dog on a more frequent basis. So maybe 2 to 3 meals a day. So while an all meat carnivore diet can have drastic benefits on the health of your dog, there are definitely a lot of other potential unwanted side effects that your dog can experience when switching from kibble to an all meat carnivore diet. But like I mentioned before, These are just temporary, and it could just be a sign that you need to adjust your dog's diet until you dial it in and get the diet tailored to your specific dog. So if you transition your dog to an all-meat carnivore diet and you experience side effects that were different from this, feel free to drop a comment below and share that with the tribe. This type of information can be very helpful for people who might be transitioning their dog. And if you've already transitioned your dog and you're on the other side of all this, let me know down below what your experience has been and what benefits you've seen. So I really hope you got some value out of this. If you haven't done so already, be sure to like, subscribe, join the Apex tribe, and I'll see you on the next one.